Manhattan never slept, but Sophia Adler had learned to hear its quieter truths. At 4:30 in the morning, when the taxis thinned and the neon softened, the city whispered secrets. That was when she usually worked best, alone in her Upper East Side penthouse, overlooking a sliver of Central Park, the hum of wealth and ambition vibrating through the glass. Sophia Adler was a corporate attorney who specialized in crisis management for multinational firms. She had built her career on precision, restraint, and foresight. People called her cold, calculated. But the truth was simpler: she observed before she acted. And that habit saved her life. The Nanny Cam had been installed for convenience, nothing more. Their twins, Noah and Elise, were 7 and prone to mischief. The device allowed Sophia to check in while she worked late at her firm on Park Avenue. One Tuesday night, she opened the app expecting to see the kids asleep and the house quiet. Instead, she saw movement in the master bedroom. At first, she thought it was a glitch. Then she recognized the back of her husband's head. Ethan. Her husband of 12 years. He was shirtless. Laughing. Relaxed in a way she hadn't seen in months. Then the woman stepped into frame. Blonde. Slim. Familiar. Sophia's fingers went cold. It was Claire. Her sister-in-law. Her husband's brother's wife. The camera caught everything: hands, whispers, clothing discarded like afterthoughts. The bed she'd chosen. The sheets she'd ordered imported from Italy. Sophia didn't scream. She didn't cry. She pressed record. The next days passed in a blur of meetings, subway rides, and silence. Sophia functioned on instinct, professionalism masking devastation. At night, she reviewed everything. Credit card statements. Travel receipts. Private jet manifests. Expense reimbursements from Ethan's hedge fund. The pattern emerged slowly, then unmistakably. Hampton's weekends charged to a client development. Luxury spas. Jewelry boutiques. Private dinners when Ethan had claimed he was working late. And then there were the messages. Sophia accessed his iPad. He had never changed the password. The texts were not just romantic. They were strategic. Ethan and Claire were trading information: corporate earnings, pending mergers, pharmaceutical trial results. Insider trading. And worse, they were using Sophia's name to justify proximity to executives, to get access she had earned through decades of work. They weren't just betraying her marriage. They were using her reputation as camouflage. Sophia said nothing. Instead, she began preparing. She hired a forensic accountant under the guise of reviewing joint assets for tax efficiency. She contacted a former colleague now working in the sex enforcement division, an old law school friend who owed her a favor. She saved everything. Every text. Every bank transfer. Every surveillance clip. She learned something chilling in the process. Ethan wasn't just cheating. He was bleeding money. Bad trades. Risky bets. Insider plays that crossed legal lines. He was desperate, and desperation made him reckless. Claire wasn't the mastermind. She was leverage. The reckoning came at the Hamptons estate. A summer fundraiser. Champagne, linen suits, ocean air heavy with privilege. Ethan stood at the center, charming donors and investors, basking in attention. Claire hovered nearby, radiant and smug. Sophia arrived late. She wore white, not for innocence, but clarity. When Ethan spotted her, his smile faltered just slightly. She kissed his cheek. "Relax," she whispered. "I wouldn't embarrass you." That was the truth. She was going to destroy him. But elegantly. At precisely 8:40 p.m., the music paused for speeches. Sophia took the microphone. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," she said calmly. "And I want to celebrate transparency. Something we don't talk about enough in finance." Polite laughter. Then she gestured. A screen lit behind her. Bank statements. Emails. Audio clips. A recorded conversation between Ethan and a trader discussing illegal trades played across the terrace. The crowd froze. This, Sophia continued, is insider trading. Murmurs turned to gasps. And this, she clicked again, showing messages between Ethan and Claire, is fraud conducted during an extramarital affair involving my sister-in-law. Claire went pale. Ethan lunged forward. Security stepped in. Then the unthinkable happened. Two men in dark suits approached from the side. Ethan Brooks, one said calmly, "You are under arrest for securities fraud and conspiracy." Cameras flashed, the Hamptons froze. The headlines were merciless. Hedge fund darling falls from grace. Power couple collapses in public scandal. Wife blows whistle on husband's empire. Claire fled to Europe. Her marriage dissolved in days. Ethan fought the charges until the evidence buried him. Sophia filed for divorce the next morning. She got half. And then some. Sophia left the Upper East Side. She bought a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, quiet, sunlit, human. She started something new. A pro bono firm dedicated to helping women trapped in financial abuse, silent partnerships, and corporate manipulation. Women who had been told to stay quiet. To be supportive. To look the other way. Her firm exploded with success. Not because she advertised. But because women talked. On a spring morning 2 years later, Sophia stood on her stoop, coffee in hand, watching her children ride their bikes down the block. The city felt different now. Less sharp. More honest. She hadn't lost everything. She had reclaimed herself. And somewhere in a federal prison, Ethan Brooks was learning what it meant to underestimate a woman who had nothing left to lose, and everything to protect. 6 months after Ethan Brooks was led out of federal court in handcuffs, Manhattan had already moved on. Scandals in the city had short lifespans. New crimes replaced old ones. New names replaced disgraced ones. But for Sophia Adler, time moved differently now, measured not by billable hours or headlines, but by mornings that felt earned. She stood in the kitchen of her Brooklyn brownstone, sunlight cutting across the butcher block counter. The house smelled like coffee and cinnamon toast. The twins were arguing about which backpack belonged to who, and for the first time in years, the noise felt grounding rather than exhausting. The old penthouse felt like a different life. A museum of ambition she no longer wanted to curate. The Ethan's trial stretched for months. Prosecutors dismantled him piece by piece. His emails. His burner phones. The shell accounts routed through the Cayman Islands. The recorded conversations Sophia had turned over sealed his fate. But what shocked the courtroom most wasn't the evidence, it was Sophia. She never cried on the stand. She never raised her voice. She spoke with precision. "He used me," she said calmly. "He used my name, my credibility, and my labor to commit crimes. I didn't realize love could be weaponized until I lived through it." The jury didn't look at Ethan when the verdict was read. They watched her. Guilty on all counts. 22 years. Claire never testified. She vanished into European social circles until extradition talks surfaced. Her name became a whisper in gossip columns, once glamorous, now radioactive. Sophia's pro bono firm, Adler Justice Group, didn't start as a statement. It started with one woman. Then 3. Then dozens. Women who had been erased by contracts they didn't understand, businesses they helped build but never owned, marriages that made them invisible. Sophia taught them how to read balance sheets. How to find power in documents. How to protect themselves before the damage became irreversible. The firm grew fast. Investors approached her constantly. She declined most of them. Power, she had learned, wasn't about expansion. It was about integrity. One rainy afternoon, nearly a year after the arrest, a familiar face appeared at her office. Ethan's brother. He looked thinner. Older. Broken. "I'm not here for money," he said quickly. I needed to say I'm sorry. I should have seen it. I should have stopped it. Sophia studied him for a long moment. I know, she said finally. But silence is a decision too. He nodded, eyes wet. I lost everything. She softened, just a little. Then you understand what it costs to look away. On a crisp fall evening, Sophia walked along the Brooklyn promenade, the Manhattan skyline glowing across the river. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't afraid. She was free. Her phone buzzed, an email from a young associate. Your story helped me leave a toxic firm today. Thank you. Sophia smiled. She looked out at the city that had broken her open and rebuilt her stronger. Not as a wife. Not as a victim. But as a woman who chose herself. Power doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it quietly walks away, and builds something better. The sun rose over Brooklyn, spilling golden light across the brownstone where Sophia Adler now lived with her children. The city was alive with its usual hum, taxis honking, sirens faint in the distance, but for the first time in over a decade, Sophia felt completely at peace. Ethan Brooks was behind bars, Claire's socialite world had crumbled, and the toxic shadows of her marriage no longer haunted her. Sophia had reclaimed not just her finances and her reputation, but her identity. She had built a pro bono law firm to protect other women from betrayal, financial abuse, and corporate deceit, a legacy far more meaningful than any marriage could have given her. The twins laughed as they played on the stoop, their voices carrying into the crisp morning air. Sophia poured herself a cup of coffee and watched them, her heart full. The city had tested her, tried to silence her, and almost destroyed her. But she had chosen to act, to fight, and to survive. In the heart of Manhattan, the towers still gleamed, but Sophia no longer needed them to measure her worth. She had power, purpose, and freedom. And that was the life she had always deserved.